My name is Kim, and I live on a pension due to my age. I have a daughter, Angela, who works as a tax accountant. Angela spent her 20s focusing on her education and career, which led her to stay single during those years. But once she turned 30, she met someone and got married. I thought a new chapter was about to unfold for her, though I never anticipated it would take such a surprising turn. Angela has always had a knack for numbers, a skill she enjoyed from a young age. It came naturally to her, which is why she decided to pursue tax accounting. My husband and I always encouraged her to follow her passion. We told her she had a gift, and we would be there to support her every step of the way. After finishing her studies, she worked for a tax office for about 10 years before launching her own firm. Our family and Angela's friends were thrilled with her success, and we celebrated this milestone together. It's one of my fondest memories. By the time Angela opened her business, she was 35 and still unmarried. She had put romance on hold for her career, but deep down, she still longed for marriage. As her business settled in, Angela began trying out matchmaking events. It was at one of these gatherings that she met Chris, a salesman at a small to medium-sized company. He was 2 years younger than Angela but immediately impressed her with his polite manners and attentiveness. She was touched to find such a genuinely nice man. Chris made an impression on her when he noticed her drink was empty and called the waiter to bring her a refill. Later, in the rain, he shared his umbrella with her on the way to the station. Despite getting soaked himself, he made sure the umbrella stayed over Angela, showing his true gentlemanly nature. Angela was convinced he was the one. After a few dates and a heartfelt confession, they started dating. Chris was always kind and thoughtful, making Angela realize just how wonderful love could be. About a year later, he proposed to her, and of course, she said yes. When I heard the news, I couldn't help but shed a tear. 3 years ago, I had lost my husband, and until his passing, he often said, "I just want to see Angela in her moment of happiness." Sadly, he didn't live to see it, but I know he would have been overjoyed by Angela's engagement. Angela and Chris moved in together, settling into her apartment and enjoying each other's company. But, as life often goes, their happiness was short-lived. One day, Angela called me, "Mom, Chris wants to formally meet you. Can we come over soon?" I was thrilled to hear this news. Angela and Chris were finalizing their wedding plans, and Chris's desire to meet with us before everything was official made me think even more highly of him. But when they arrived to greet us, my impression started to change. I had never met Chris face-to-face before. Our conversations had been limited to phone calls during their dates, so I was a little nervous to meet him in person. When Chris and Angela arrived at my home, he introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm engaged to Angela. I just wanted to meet you before we get married," he said. His greeting struck me as odd. Angela had always described him as confident, and our brief phone calls gave me the impression he was outgoing. But in person, he seemed hesitant and unsure of himself. "Thank you for coming," I said, trying to make him feel at ease. Chris responded, "Well, it's just what's proper." I couldn't shake the sense that something was off, but when he said, "I heard about your husband's passing, and I wish I could have met him," I thought maybe he was genuinely kind. Angela reassured him, "You seem a little tense, just relax, it's fine." After dinner, they left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Angela began to sense it too. After they had officially registered their marriage, Angela called me one day, "Mom, Chris has been saying some strange things lately." Concerned, I listened intently. She continued, "You know when Chris came over to greet you? On his way home, he said, 'I was surprised. I thought your house would be bigger. What do you think, Mom?'" At the time, Angela had explained that after Dad passed away, it was just me living alone, so I downsized to a smaller, older apartment. Chris seemed to understand then, but later, he said something else. He said, "Your mom's eyes don't seem to focus. Does she even know who she's talking to?" Angela had to explain that I had gone blind after my husband's death, but Chris reacted by saying, "Huh, blind? And you're sending her $1,500 every month? Seriously? That means the pension isn't enough? Huh, I see." His response, laced with a bitter smile, puzzled Angela. She couldn't understand why he would bring up her financial support like that, especially when it was something she mentioned only briefly. As the wedding approached, Chris asked, "Is your mom going to come to the wedding? Is money going to be an issue?" This made me wonder how he truly saw me. I reassured Angela, "Don't worry about it, tell him everything's fine." Despite my unease, the wedding expenses were already paid, and it was too late to cancel. "Let's just enjoy it," I decided, not wanting to cast a shadow over Angela's special day. Of course, I would attend and celebrate my daughter's wedding, even if I had lingering concerns. But when the wedding day arrived, something unexpected happened. With someone guiding me, I was surprised to find that Angela had nearly 20 colleagues and friends from her office in attendance, while Chris had only 3 friends and his parents. The imbalance was striking. Maybe his colleagues were busy, given Chris's age. Perhaps many of his friends were already married and couldn't attend. So, I tried to remain positive. As the ceremony went on, I felt more reassured by Chris's lively behavior during the reception. When it was time for the bride and groom to change outfits, I decided to go and speak with Chris's parents and friends. Chris's parents were gracious and left a good impression. However, his friends' comments were unsettling. They said things like, "Should we congratulate you?" And, "What should we say? We hope your daughter finds happiness," before adding, "It's hard to believe Chris is getting married. He must have used his sales skills to win her over, right?" Their tone made me feel uncomfortable. The more I thought about it, the more I questioned the authenticity of the marriage. The words spoken by Chris's friends were unsettling, certainly not the kind of remarks you'd expect at a wedding, especially from the groom's friends to the bride's mother. Regrettably, I even entertained the idea that Angela might be better off divorcing him if things didn't improve. Of course, I never wanted to imagine such a thing, but as the newlyweds re-entered after changing clothes, my worries began to feel like reality. Angela looked stunning in her dress, a soft pink that my companion described as breathtaking. She's wearing a long pink gown, and she looks gorgeous. Although I couldn't see it myself, I tried to picture it in my mind. But even as I imagined it, I couldn't shake the growing sense that maybe marrying Chris wasn't the best choice for her. During the reception, Chris took the microphone to give a speech, but it quickly went downhill. "Thank you all for being here today," he began politely. But then he added, "My dream is to live a life of leisure, and marrying Angela has made that possible." There was an uncomfortable murmur from the crowd. Chris continued, unaware of the shift in mood, "But to achieve my dream, there's something I must do." The atmosphere grew tense, and everyone waited anxiously to hear what he would say next. To everyone's shock, he blurted out, "Angela makes a lot of money and sends $1,500 every month to her mother-in-law. But that money should be used for our life together. Her blind mother-in-law is a burden. A blind old woman is just a nuisance." The room fell silent, and Angela's face turned pale with shock. "What are you saying? You can't just stop the support," she protested. But Chris insisted, "Why not? Our life together is more important than your mother." In that moment, everything I had feared about Chris seemed to be confirmed. It became clear to me that he had come into this marriage with expectations about Angela's money. When he visited my home, he must have assumed, based on its modest appearance, that I was living on a low pension, and Angela's income was being funneled to support me. In his eyes, I was just a nuisance, and he probably thought Angela's wealth would be his ticket to an easy life. But did he really think he could get away with this? Little did he know, it was he who would suffer the consequences of his greed. Angela, however, seemed even more furious than I was. She clearly no longer cared about maintaining a festive mood. Her friends exchanged glances, some with obvious disdain for Chris. Angela suddenly grabbed the microphone from Chris, her tone icy. "You seem to have misunderstood something, Chris. Do you not know who my mother is?" Chris responded, "What? What are you talking about? Isn't she just the old, useless woman you're supporting?" Angela took a deep breath and, though clearly irritated, explained, "My parents own a metalworking company. It's a small business, but it's well known. They've even started selling metal art internationally." As Angela mentioned the name of the company, I could hear Chris's voice falter. Angela continued, "My parents make a lot of money, probably more than 3 times what I earn. They've been contributing to their pension for years. Now that they've handed over the business to their employees, they have a comfortable pension and plenty of savings. My father's inheritance has come through, and they can live without my financial support. They even employ 2 housekeepers for the house because of my mother's blindness." Chris's face turned pale as he listened. "Then, you don't have to live in that old house, right?" he stammered. Angela replied firmly, "Living in a large house would mean more cleaning, right? And since I live alone, I don't need that much space." Chris was speechless, his body trembling with discomfort. Finally, Angela made herself clear, and just to clarify, the $1,500 I send each month? That's me paying back my college tuition. As for the place we're living in? My parents bought it, and even though my mom said I don't need to pay her back, I insisted. The house is technically in my name. So, you'll need to leave. Chris was stunned. What? Why do I have to leave? We're married, aren't we? Angela's response was unwavering, we're getting a divorce. We may have just registered, but let's call this a divorce ceremony. She came over to me, having made her decision clear. I stood up and addressed the guests. I apologize for the unexpected turn of events, but as a mother, I'm relieved this divorce took place. My husband in heaven and I are both grateful for this. The room erupted into applause, some guests perhaps moved by the name of our company, recognizing its significance. Even Chris's friends clapped, likely aware of our family's stature. I gave a bow to Chris's parents, and my companion noticed they seemed genuinely apologetic. As we left the venue, Angela and I felt a sense of relief, despite the circumstances. Later, Angela returned the wedding gifts and paid her share of the wedding expenses, as agreed. The divorce was finalized smoothly with the help of a lawyer, and Angela embraced her single status once again. She apologized for falling for such a man and creating such turmoil. But I reassured her that this could be a valuable lesson for her, especially given her earlier indifference to relationships. Angela smiled at me and said, "It's really different when you're a charismatic leader, Mom. I want to be like you." We shared a laugh at the thought. And when Chris's friend had said, "Typical Chris, the salesman," it became clear, he had used his charm to deceive Angela. In a way, his ability to manipulate was impressive. But as a blind woman, I had learned to sense things through tone and voice, which is why I immediately felt something was off when Chris spoke to me. Perhaps that was my real advantage. Meanwhile, Chris continued boasting about his wife at work. He would tell his coworkers, "My wife may not be cute or fun, but she's loaded. With her money, I can quit my job anytime I want." How jealous are you? His coworkers, clearly repulsed, began to ignore him. No wonder none of them showed up to the wedding. After the divorce, Chris's entitled attitude caught up with him. The company president fired him, and with no job and no support, Chris was left to pay half of the wedding expenses. Struggling, he borrowed money to cover his share and ended up living in a rundown apartment, getting by on day labor. As for his friends who attended the wedding, they admitted, "We only came because he came to ours. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bothered. We're not that close. And he only gave a $30 gift at our weddings." What kind of nerve is that? It became clear that Chris didn't have true friends. Even his own parents had grown tired of his behavior at the wedding. They refused to lend him money or allow him to return home. Now, forced to take a loan to settle his debts, he found himself living in misery. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.